We're
Okay,
live.
and we're live. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the European Customer Experience Organization's Fireside Chat, or maybe I should say lunch chat, depending on the time of the day it is in your neck of the woods, with Brian Kramer, author of, among others, the book H2H, Human to Human. Really happy to have you here, Brian. Welcome. And
Thank,
during this
thank you.
session, During this session, we will be discussing enriching customer experience outcomes and impact with H2H. My name is Nicolette Buring. I'm an ECXO ambassador, and I will be facilitating our fireside chat today. And assisting me in the background with your questions is Ricardo Salzgurko, MD and founding member of ECXO. And please feel free to submit your questions in the chat anytime. And Ricardo will periodically alert us to them as our fireside chat progresses. Now, ECXO is the European Customer Experience Organization, which is an independent nonprofit business network for CX professionals dedicated to developing a CX maturity model for Europe. Our objective is to accomplish this by educating corporations and collaborating with brands through impactful and valuable practical events and discussion forums such as today that challenge, improve, or validate the status quo across Europe. In our fireside chat today, our goal is to identify how CX can benefit from H2H.
Nicolette,
So,
just a
again,
second.
welcome.
I have to interrupt you because we are not live. Wait a second. Something is delayed. I'm sorry. Wait. Something is wrong here. Lunch.
Okay.
Oh. People are seeing. Okay, so that's all right. I just was. I cannot see the image yet. So perfect. Go forward.
So I need to start again?
No. Go
Okay.
forward.
All right.
Everything's okay. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure that people can see that. Emma is there. She said that she can see.
Okay, perfect. So, again, welcome, Brian. And I would appreciate it
What
if
a
you can
human
give a
moment.
short introduction. Yes, exactly, a very human moment. If you can introduce yourself shortly, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that we just had that moment given the topic today.
Yes,
That's
totally.
it's almost as if we did that on purpose, but I will
Mhm.
leave that open to everybody uh, to guess on that. So, yeah, I'm Brian Kramer. I'm a author, speaker, executive coach, advisor, board member, investor. So you can rest medicine. I am really into transformation. My whole career has been about transformation, transformation for humanity, transformation for humans within organizations. And my roles have largely been in helping companies to transform, whether it's in leadership or in in customer service, customer experience, or anything related to how do we create more customer engagement. I owned an agency for 25 years and still now in a consultancy. That agency, Pure Matter, was a and is a brand in Silicon Valley that we built. My co-owner and myself, Courtney Smith, also my life partner, and she and I started the agency in 2001, and we created an agency that eventually got to about 30 employees and worked with companies like IBM, Cisco, Netflix, MasterCard, IBM. I think I said that. So anyway, that brings us to today, where we focus now on and have always, but even more so now on H2H, which I know we're going to talk about. H2H is something that I wrote about in 2014 that has escalated into a book, Human to Human, and then into shareology, how sharing powers the human economy, why we share what we share as humans, and then into a global TED Talk. That TED Talk then escalated into speaking both in Europe and the United States and all over the world, traveling 200 days a year. Then I burned out. I stopped. I created a year of flux, and then returned back to being a healthier me. I lopped off 85 pounds, lost diabetes, and created a better lifestyle where I could coach and be an executive advisor. Anyway, I'll stop there. That's who I am. There's a lot more that we can talk about, but thank you for letting me introduce myself.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so after a period of refresh and refocus, you're human again. Human to human. We are used to talking about business in terms of B2B and B2C. And H2H, in your book, Human to Human, you argue that it's humans who do business with humans, not companies. So can you share with us your thinking and why you think this is important and how your H2H movement inspired the business world?
So H2H, why at that time when I wrote it did it inspire the world and the reason it at the time is different than how it is now. At the time, social media was just getting sort of started. When you think about social, it's actually not that old. All these platforms, especially the ones that you're watching this video on right now, these are new tools. This is a new concept. Even though it feels old at this point, and we all feel old, I'm sure, it's not new. Social media became this interesting component that changed the way we did business forever. And if you think about it, it was the first time that companies actually had to listen to the customer because the customer had a vocal public platform. They could put their voice onto LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and companies had to deal with that. And so what do? They had to respond. They had to come up with governance. They had to come up with ways that they could answer publicly in front of other people without ruining their brand. And it was just almost, it sent every company into a spiraling motion of what do we do and how do we do this as a unified approach. It was easier for the 1 or 2 person small businesses because they had no one to answer to. Not that they did it right, but they had no one to answer to. And the larger companies were like, how do we do this in coordination? Now you look years later and it's table stakes, almost, not perfect. And companies really understand that this is just a part of doing business. But that act of actually answering call and response, someone saying something and you having to respond, that's a human to human act that they never had before. Before that, it was billboards, radio, and TV, basically. And I mean, when you think of omni-channel and you think of analytics and you think of just like digital and everything, it really was born around the time that social came out, that everything just started to blossom out. So really business became more about, and humans really became more about standing out more so by responding to each other globally, more so than they ever did. Geofences got dropped, global became more connected, and life changed forever.
So you've fast forwarded to today. Do you think H2H is still relevant? Yes, it's relevant, but in what way? Does it still is something that companies that can learn in and develop in, or are we all perfect at doing this?
So I love that question. Are we all perfect at doing anything? No.
We're human.
It's so we're always in constant flux. And now today you enter a whole new mix of problems, right? Or challenges, I should say, that we have to face. And we still haven't quite gotten the idea behind how to answer a customer's LinkedIn post or tweet, or X, I should say, or thread or anything on what should we say. There's some really great companies that are good at it. And now we're talking publicly, right? Like there's also the whole backside of social, which is the private DMing. Which is really a large part of also where customer experience and customer service takes place. That is just hidden, but it leaves a mark on what you observe, what you feel, or the customer experience that you have. So you've got just those two channels, the public and the private. And no, they haven't gotten that down just yet. There's not even anywhere near what we hope to get as a quality level, but there's ways to measure it going up. There's ways to measure in a mass increase in improvement of customer care and customer, longevity, in how long they're going to stay, and all kinds of other things. There's a measurement piece that we can talk about at some point that that we put in place, that I work with clients on, that helps to create the thing that you can then measure. And now you have this ability to create more human interactions, knowing it's going to matter, it's going to count.
And measuring in which way it counts. Maybe you can give us a bit more an idea of that measurement platform that you built.
Yeah, it's so, and you can read about this in the H2H book as well, which is broken down by 3 different pillars. There's simplicity, and if you think about a brand that embraces simplicity, and anybody who's watching, if you want to type into the comments what brand you think embraces simplicity, what comes up for you when you think simplicity? It's hard to come up with, and yet there are brands that represent it really well. Sometimes they embrace it and put a focus on it in customer experience or customer service, or just in the products that they provide and how they present themselves. Nicolette, what do you think a brand is that represents itself or embraces simplicity?
Well, I would say, probably the usual suspect, Apple.
Yeah.
They know how to make very complicated tools very accessible.
Yeah. It's it's true. It's they make something so complex simple. I also love, and they're not the only brand that does this, but if you want to communicate with them, you can do it either human to human, go into a store, or you can go do it digitally and never talk to a human. They've made the ability to engage with them to your personal preference, not to their personal preference or their company preference. And that to me is the ultimate simplicity. Now Amazon's not perfect, but sometimes they can be construed that way too. To return a product might be easier to do. So then the next one after simplicity is empathy. Empathy is a human quality that is hard to replicate. Empathy, a company or a brand that embraces empathy. Again, write down who you think, what brand embraces empathy into the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Those of you that are listening right now, I'd love to hear it. And Nicolette, who do you think embraces empathy?
Well, I'm probably going to give you a surprising answer, and that is Microsoft.
Okay.
And it's actually, I downloaded their 365 suite.
Yep.
And I work on Apple, and I didn't get it to work. And I did the usual search on blogs and things like that, but it still didn't work. And I mean, if they have every customer downloading it for 99 euros, they're broke. But the interesting thing was that I spent 1.5 hours with a guy on the phone, and actually also an escalation to second level with a warm handover, so I didn't have to re-explain everything. And they really went above and beyond to help me solve the problem, and it was solved. And it's actually something that I had never expected from a company like Microsoft, but it was a really emphatic experience.
Mm. Yeah, when you take a global brand like that and you think about what just happened, what they did for you, it really makes a difference in how you interpret what's possible.
Yeah,
Because if a brand that size can make you feel that they care, then any brand has that possibility.
yeah,
You're talking about now one of the top two brands in the world, so
yeah.
so this is possible for everyone to make someone feel cared for, or that they care about you. Um, I'm going to go back and talk about Amazon, because they will return any product, or most of the time. More than not, and they make it easy. They don't ask you questions really, and they will make it possible. Even with where I'm at here in Lisbon, Portugal, where we don't have an Amazon center yet, returning a product doesn't seem to be an issue for me. So if they can do it here, they can do it anywhere, and it feels like they care about the customer, because they're not gonna nickel and dime me, so to speak, or
Hmm.
euro, depending upon where you're at, and make it hard on me so that I can actually get my thing back. And that's excellent customer care. The last one is ironic to the very first question that you asked me, which is perfection. Now I'm going to go with imperfection as being the third and final pillar. And imperfection is usually something you see in a brand that steps up to embrace the imperfection of their brand when the chips are down. We don't see companies often enough when they sense into the imperfection to embrace the imperfection. And so, how do we do that? And what brand do you think? And if you're out there, please again put your into the comments. What brand do you think embraces imperfection when the chips are down? Maybe it's in customer service. Maybe it's in just their totality. Maybe they're purpose driven. Whatever it is, what brand do you think embraces the imperfection of who they are? Who's that for you? It's a tough one, right?
Well, I
Nicolette?
actually, yeah, for me, what comes up is Ritz Carlton.
Ah,
Ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and
yeah.
they have calculated in the imperfection, and they have given their people the space to take ownership of that imperfection and turn it around into a great experience. So, yeah, for me, they made it very human.
There
Or
you
they
go.
make it very human. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, the very few times I get to stay at that really nice brand, I can sense that. That makes a lot of sense. I also know that there's brands out there that really make everyone feel included. Dove might be a brand where they celebrate the imperfection of skin uh, and
Hmm.
and and skin color. When you look at certain nonprofits and the way that they communicate. Now, not everyone's really good at that. We also might look at some social brands starting with F and ending in K that are horrible at all three of those: simplicity, empathy, and imperfection. Uh, and sorry if you work at Facebook, but when you look at all three of those, it really doesn't give you this sense of wanting to connect in to the brand. It's just now a tool that we use, but it's not something that we're invested in, that we become raving fans of, that will never leave this brand. Heck, if something comes along, we're going to go to it pretty quickly. So those are the three. Now you can take a rating of 10 out of 10, from 0 to 10 to 10 out of 10 on each of those, and rate each of those things within a brand in certain categories. So you can get really specific, or you can go broad level. We do this around lots of different ways, but you can do it like around a campaign. I've done this in workshops where we've gone through and actually set up different markers, and then we rate it, and then we see how human is the brand. And then we
Hmm.
can tell by engagement where it sits against that rating, and now we can tell how far their increase or decrease in revenue is actually going to show up based
Yeah,
upon
that
how
was
how human the brand is going to be. So it
Yeah, that
really
was
does.
what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Does H2H impact the financial results? Have you
Yeah.
seen that?
Well, so yes, absolutely. And think about the brand that you love, like Microsoft. Why are they now rated? Well, they're flip-flopping between 1 and 2, but they're a human brand, like you just said. They turned around in a massive way in the last 10 years, and they've become this human brand that you identify with. I think that's an excellent suggestion that you made about Microsoft, and that is the very reason, because their number one KPI, at least for the last 10 years, was the customer. And what they did to put that in place was engagement. So everything else became secondary to engagement. If we make engagement our number one KPI, engagement of with the customer, engagement with our employee, engagement internally, not just externally, they made engagement across the board their number one KPI. That raised their brand to a whole new level, becoming the number one, number two top brand in the world.
Okay. And I always say, what's inside will leak out. So it sounds like you worked more with people in the marketing domain, but marketing can come up with the concepts, but how do you also involve the customer facing part of the organization, or maybe salespeople, in this whole concept? Because
Yeah,
if they feel like the company is overpromising and they're like, well, we can't deliver that because our systems don't work, our processes aren't really set up to do what we need to do. Or like, for instance, the example of Microsoft, I have a team leader that says I have 5 minutes for every call. How am I going to do this?
Yeah, I'd say it's about even split between marketing, sales, customer service, and HR and operations, where we work in all of these different areas, and they all have to work together in order for everything to work for the customer. So it's not just, it can't just be marketing. It has to be the leadership throughout all of this for it to work with the perfect symphony. So each one of those has its own little strategy that we could probably spend a couple hours talking about. I'll try to boil it down into little areas of how you can affect change in each of these. For sales, you want alignment, and this is an age-old problem. Alignment between marketing and sales, and it's still the hardest thing for companies to get down in terms of what that baton pass is between the customer, pre-customer and current customer. So where is that baton pass happening between marketing and sales? Also, I'm going to talk about communication, and communication is a problem still today, since cave wall drawings, in terms of how we talk to the customer. Is our messaging on? As a salesperson, are you promising what we're actually going to deliver? And are you being given the right information on what we're going to deliver? And so there's a communication escalation challenge going up and down the organization that affects not just sales, not just marketing, but the entire organization. So these are the fundamental things that you have to put in place. When you start with simplicity, empathy, and imperfection, you can really boil it down across the organization. You can really make things much easier on yourself by looking at different categories of challenges, so that you're affecting change in each of these areas. And you're not just saying, how will sales affect change? How will marketing affect change? No, let's actually reverse engineer that into simplicity, empathy, and imperfection. How are we all going to affect change together?
So if I now involve into the equation, the digital landscape of our current era, and also thinking about, CX and the rapid developments around generative AI, automation, machine learning, connected devices, chatbots, virtual reality, augmented reality. combined with the ever-present pressure on costs. And then if you look at empathy, simplicity, empathy, and perfection, how do you still keep the simplicity in there and still keep the human to human
Yeah.
aspect in there, and is it relevant, or
Yeah.
is it actually, are humans going to become obsolete?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. That's the question right there. That
Yeah.
right there is the question. Like, if anybody takes anything away from all of this, it's that question that I think everybody is probably concerned about and should be, for obvious reasons. The challenge here is not how much we put in technology into all that we do. The challenge is, how do we put more humanity into all that we do at this point?
Yeah.
It used to be the reverse. Not very long ago, it used to be, how do we get more technology involved in all of our human functions? Not the case today. Today, we are rewarded, all of us, for being more human. I'll say it again. We're all rewarded for
Yeah.
being more human. It is actually reversed, so that being human has become our competitive challenge. And
Exactly.
the
I
more
feel a
human
new book coming up.
the more human a company is, the more they're going to win. So now take a look at it with that lens. Look at how much technology you have installed. What are all the different engagement points inside and outside your company? And put it on the wall and walk over and ask yourself, where are the human moments?
Yeah.
Where are they? And are they in the right spots? Are they making a difference? Are they the human moments of truth that are going to change the way that we affect change, the way that we want it to become the Microsoft, the one that actually focused on being more human?
Yeah. That's, I think, in all the technological developments, that's going to be the biggest challenge. And
Right?
how do you do that in a cost effective way? And I think that it's also getting even more your ducks in a row with respect to measuring where do you create value and where do you destroy value, and who do you create or destroy value for, the business or the customer. And I'm also thinking with this, because I really like your your initial statement. People talk about B2B and B2C, but it's human to human. And I'm just wondering, where do we stand with that nowadays? Because I mean, Ricardo and I have discussions about this quite frequently, where I say, B2B, yes, maybe you need a different approach at some point, but at the end of the day, it's also humans. And I think that that's, especially in a B2B environment, would you say that technology makes it even easier there to be more human, because you have more tools and more data to feed you into, when you really need to be that human and need to make that human connection, when it's really value creating for that person in a decision making unit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're spot on that it really it matters where the engagement points are. Where are we having the conversations? When are we having them? Is it too much? Is it too little? Are we addressing things fast enough? Right now, we're not. Speed is really an issue. It's an issue for almost every company out there. And so I anticipate that AI is going to help us create more speed, which is going to at least allow us to have a foot in the race. But then all of a sudden it becomes a matter of, where does the right conversation fit? and when. So how do we insert ourselves? We can't scale being human. We never could, we never will. There's only one of you, there's one of me, and the only way that we can add to a company is by adding more headcount. And so that's an age-old problem. What AI is going to help us do is to be able to perhaps create more of an understanding that there is a path to that conversation faster, to the right person. So, for instance, if I'm needing something that where I'm having this robotic conversation, am I allowing a path out, whether it's in customer service, or it's in sales? Sometimes I don't want to buy from a human. Let's all be honest. Like, that's why Amazon does so well. I just want to buy the product and I don't want to talk to anybody. Sometimes when I'm in customer service, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want my refund. And sometimes it escalates. Like, for instance, this guy that went on to Amazon Chat. I love it because it validates exactly what we're talking about here and what your question is, which is, when do we turn on the opposite, I believe. And that's, this guy that went on and he said, I can't, I need help. And the Amazon person said, may I call you Thor? What? The guy said, may I call you Thor? And he said, yes, may I call you Odin? The customer says. And now he says, well, what might be thy problem? And now then it escalates into Valhalla is in Parish. And we have to fight back because the book was never received. And the Amazon guy goes back and forth and they're having this wonderful conversation, and boom, this shall never happen again. I will deliver the book in the next 24 to 48 hours. You will have this and Valhalla will stay intact. No way can an AI do that. And no. Now, what AI did do, and what technology did do, is it allowed that real human experience, that fun, personalized experience for that guy to be tapped into. What did he order? What's his challenge? And how can I best serve him in the most human way? Mm-hmm. That's technology and humans working together. Not versus, and so when we can match these certain situations up and create these value-driven areas, man, we have just made customer service your best marketing ever, because that just goes off and off and off.
And your best sales channel. But whilst you were talking, I also realized that speaking about the human aspects, I think that AI will also make it much more feasible to be able to proactively reach out to customers. Because if the AI sees certain patterns of behavior coming up, then all you need to do is make sure that feeds into, and that can be in a B2B environment, your DMU, somebody in the decision-making unit that is responsible for a certain aspect, or a consumer. I'll never forget, the most groundbreaking changes that I've done a lot of transformations of customer service, and the most groundbreaking changes have always been those moments where we were able to reach out to customers proactively and say to them, okay, you may not be experiencing a problem yet, but in the next few days, you probably will. And to prevent that from happening, so it's not only reactive waiting for a customer to come to you, but I think with H2H as a concept, if and the technological developments, if you can turn it around and you can reach out to customers proactively, because what are the moments that we need a human being the most? I would say it's like you say, if I want to order something, I don't want to talk to a human. If I want a refund, I don't want to talk to a human. But like in my situation with Microsoft, after having spent 2 hours to try and solve it myself, I was really desperate because I need those tools to work. and then to actually, be able to reach out to a human being. But what now if we take that concept a little further and Microsoft can see, oh, she downloaded this, she hasn't started using it yet. We can see that she's on our blogs searching. Let's reach out to this customer and say, hey, could it be that you're experiencing problems? Can we help you? I mean, that would be mind blowing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's neat when a brand can meet your need before you reach out.
Yeah, exactly.
When they actually do something that makes it so special, like so unique. For instance, I left my iPad in the back of a rental car at Avis, and I didn't get a chance to. I left it in the car, and then we got home. That's when I first discovered it. I went on to their site, and I was going to make a claim, and they had already sent me an email saying, we found your iPad. It was in this car. We've already shipped it out. It'll be to you tomorrow morning. And I was like, and who
Wow.
gets my business for the next 20 years?
Yeah.
You do, because I didn't have to go through the effort of actually doing this. These are very simple, like things that again makes them more human, but they use technology to make it possible. And so, yeah, when they can meet your need, like Microsoft does, or anyone does, to really do that in the most human way, but even more so ahead of when you anticipate it. Oh, you have just met the shining star. You are the crown jewel.
Exactly. Well, interestingly enough, because you wrote your book H2H in 2014, and especially with all the technological changes and the speed with which this technology develops, it feels like H2H is becoming all the more relevant every day. It's like you said, for companies that to really create sustainable competitive advantage, where do you go? Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, where do you go? And
Yeah.
so, that there's a lot of things that you can do, and that's to keep your eye on the ball and not forget what's important. There's a lot of shiny pennies out there right now that we can certainly be taking a look at. There's hundreds, and if not thousands, of AI tools, and I'm a geek at heart. I'm testing as many as I can to see what's
Same here.
possible. I want to know, like, how is this going to help, and where is it going to hurt, so that I know, like, where is this going to be engaged. And I'm looking at it. I'm an internal optimist, so I'm looking at it as, how is it going to help, more so that we can engage faster in a more human way. I'm not looking at it as, how is this going to be a detriment to humanity, because I think that yes, there are going to be people out there that do that, and that doesn't need to be me. And so one of the things that is really important is that we look at testing these tools like anybody else, and making sure that we're staying on top of it, because we are going to get left behind. Just like when social media first came out, it was something that we all had to do, whether you liked it or not. As a business brand, the customer was going to be there talking about it. Same thing with these sorts of things, with speed. Speed is going to. Okay, somebody remembers my drone test in Winter Park. That is awesome. I want to know who remembers that, because I don't see a name up there. I remember that too. That was a fun time. And so, yeah, that's the important piece, is that that we are testing these technologies, and we're really putting our best foot forward into that.
Well, and also something else, wouldn't you say that it also puts the employees of an organization in a new light? No longer there just to execute tasks, but maybe even more so there to add that human aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's sort of taking people, and especially in contact centers, from the factory workers of our age to the empathizers of our age, like Daniel Pink said in his book.
Yeah, it certainly stands out, doesn't it? Who
It
are the
does.
empathizers? It stands out pretty loudly. You can see it a little more clearly. You can also see, have you noticed on LinkedIn the people that respond with AI responses and the difference in
Yeah,
the tonality and pacing and words that are
yeah.
being used? So people stand out. Humanity stands out in everything that we do. And if you really, like I said, I know I keep hammering this home, but humanity stands out. So stand out more and look at everything with that eye, like the eye of how can I use this technology to make me more human, to stand
Yeah.
out in a real way for and I'm saying for the good on the light side of things. How can I enhance being more human in more places and reverse everything that's going on with just putting more bots, more automation, more of this, more of that. For instance, like every week, 2 weeks, I put a newsletter out, and I will then try to reply back to everybody. And actually, not try, I do, and reply back to everyone. And either I'll reply back and sometimes I'll take a Saturday and I'll go for a walk and I'll reply back in video to everyone. So it's just going like the little extra mile and saying, hey, Nicolette, thanks for your comment. I really appreciate it. I love what you said about this. And here's how I feel about that. And sending it off in 30 seconds makes that way more personable than me hitting reply and saying hi. Any brand can do that. Any brand can make things just that little extra more of human than other brands.
That actually goes back to, I think, one of the core things of branding. It needs to be personal, relevant, and unique, right? And
Absolutely.
that's going to be even more important. Shall we have a look if there are some questions? Ricardo, can you help us with this?
Not yet, but we can continue the conversation. Stop quality, believe me. Great
All right.
conversation.
Okay. Okay. So you'll signal us when there are
Yeah,
questions?
yeah, I will.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Um, yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground already. Are there things that I haven't asked and you're like, well, it would be good to bring that forward?
Uh, I think that we've covered a lot of stuff. I think the only other thing that I would bring up is the simplicity piece.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a lot about empathy. We talked a lot about imperfection. The thing that I think I would bring forward more of is simplicity. And that looks a lot different both internally versus externally. But here's an area to focus on is language. The language that we use internally oftentimes gets used externally. So like acronyms. I don't know how many times I'm sure you have too, where we walk into a client and I need a dictionary for how they're
Yeah.
talking because they use acronyms that are foreign to me, and those acronyms, end up becoming a part of how the customer or potential customer receives the communication, and things start to become more complex because we make them more complex. We start to speak that way because we take for granted what we all know internally and turn it
Mm-hmm.
into something that, well, they should understand that. That's easy. And now all of a sudden it becomes a harder purchase or a harder um, customer service uh, moment. So one of the things we really have to take at is language. What is the language that we're using internally, and go through that almost as its own workshop and say how do we speak in the language of our customer?
Yeah.
And what if we were to then take a look at how our customers speak and adopt that as our language? If we could do that, then we'll be reversing this complexity that we're creating on our own. I think a lot of times I can get rid of that dictionary that it takes to, when I first walk in, that I'm starting to create, and I can just immediately understand what they serve, how they serve, and who they serve. If we can do that, we are solving half the issue. And it's not easy. It's not easy reversing a language. It's not easy, really understanding how to make a lot of people, not make, but encourage a lot of people to adopt this way of speaking. So I think that's really important, is to look at the language that we use and start to encourage that. That's a lot, you could focus on that in all areas of the organization, and you can take it and adopt it as an HR premise, leading the charge, depending upon the organization, or you can do it in your individual groups. However you want to do that, start somewhere and start to simplify the language.
Do you have a specific example of that, without maybe mentioning a company, but or where HR really moved in?
Yeah, like every company. A specific example would be a lot of times it gets reinterpreted in a messaging exercise. And so I see it a lot in the way that companies are going out to message, either in a rebrand or a new brand. A lot of times in a rebrand, you can see that it's been regenerated, refreshed, and so they're redoing their style guide. The style guide is where the messaging ladder exists. When you focus in on a messaging ladder, what's the hierarchy of the message that we're going to create for this organization, in turn for our customer. And at the end of the day, this is the number one thing that simplifies the language. Locking in on what the customer truly cares about. The customer care abouts are the things that should drive your language. Yeah. So, look at any rebrand and look at the customer careabouts. Have they interpreted how the customer cares about that brand or that product or that service? And if they have interpreted it correctly and or used, data to create more of that understanding, it's really going to connect more in with, then ironically, how sales then start to communicate, and how customer service starts to communicate, and how customer experience and the whole starts to communicate. It's interesting because a rebrand really does start to drive that language, as one example.
It does. It's interesting, and that's the reason why I'm laughing. I will never forget, a multinational where I was chief customer officer, and there was, I thank God I was involved in the work group for the rebranding, and then my marketing peers came up with a rebrand, and it was a very sophisticated design, and they had a whole story. And I said, guys, our customers there's no way they're going to understand this. And they said, no, your customer service, you don't understand this. I said, okay, do me a favor and just test this among our customers and among our customer facing employees. Well, they didn't understand it at all. So, and that was really good, that actually, and that also goes when it's about simplicity, and especially a rebranding, involve a broader, a multidisciplinary representation of your company.
Daniel Browning is asking a question. What are
Exactly.
ways?
Thank you, Ricardo. I was getting to that. Daniel, thank you for your question. What are ways that brands can maintain individual humans' authenticity while structuring their brand-based approach to problem solving? That's a really interesting one. So making it human, but still sort of within the brand the brand-based approach.
So I love that. Dan is a great friend. So thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. He lives here in Portugal with me, and he is an awesome.
Nice.
If you need an operations person, he's your guy. So operations or Salesforce. So here's the thing about that, Dan, is my personal approach to that is keeping things lean. Because I think when we go, like for instance, let's take IDEO for example. IDEO, when they built their company, they built it up to, I don't know why they chose 49, but they chose 49 employees per business line. So once they hit 49 employees, they would separate out the P&L and physically the space too. Like if you go to Palo Alto, they have, I don't know how many buildings, like 10 or more. And each building is its own P&L with its own set of 49 employees. And they would keep things small that way so that they could keep authenticity within the company, the individual ideas. Being a company that generates ideas, IDEO, they needed to stay innovative, and they needed to do it in a way that they could still grow the company. So they kept expanding out by building, but they would separate out the P&L and the the employees to keep it small and tight. It's a great way to look at organizations, I think. I'll take another example.
I was just wondering if you can't do that.
Well, here's another one. A friend of mine was the CTO of HP, and Chief Technology Officer, and he was in charge of new innovation. And new innovation would help drive experience. And he went into stores, and he would watch people with the product and see how they used it. And he spotted oftentimes that people weren't picking up and using it the way that they had designed it. And he'd go back to the team. Problem was that they couldn't implement it fast enough. And so he said to the CEO, I've got to go move faster. I have to do this faster with an organization that's not built for me to do this. So he created a building called Area 51, and he separated out 50 employees into that building and said, our only mandate here is to help make sure that we are continuing to create innovation for our customers so that we can serve them faster. And so he did that. He then took a piece of the company and said, here's how we're going to serve people faster and move through things that are holding us back. So there are ways and innovative approaches that I believe that you can start to, create or segment areas of your business. Not that you want silos. I'm against silos, but how do you create segmented areas so that we can maintain our, back to Dan's question, our individual humanity within a group? Because as it starts to get larger and larger and larger, it's harder and harder and harder. So we have to keep it somewhat segmented if we want to be effective.
Yeah, that actually sort of speaks to me also. If you look at customer service environments, then it's often thousands of people who often are more treated as human doings than human beings, sort of dehumanized robots. Renata has asked another question. Thank you, Renata. Will the CX replace customer service activities role?
I love
CX
that.
Replace.
If I'm reading it right, I might be misinterpreting. So if you have more that you want to jot down, please put it in the question. But I'm taking that as a CX technology question, not just CX on the whole, because I don't think CX will ever replace customer service. I think they go hand in hand. But if you put the word technology in there, then we start to get a little nervous about what will happen. But no, I don't think it will. I really believe that, again, remember, I'm the eternal optimist. I don't think that it will ever replace it, because for everything that we continue to create causes, this is like, right? I mean, think about it. Everything we create causes a whole new problem. Everything we create
Great
creates
point.
another. What's that?
A great point. Just reflecting. I'm sorry, I'm not mute.
He is so excited about what I said that we got him to be a part of it. Thanks, man. So I love it. I love it. So anyway, no, because everything, every challenge that technology is going to create for us, think about everything that has happened over the last decade. If you can't just think about the last 2 years, if you can't think about the last 6 months, but everything that has been created that we started to use caused another thing for us to have to worry or pay attention to. And that became our new job. So if you think about that, that's not going to stop or end. We're always going to have that. The question is, are you willing to learn what that new thing is, upskill, and be a part of that? If you are,
Well,
then
and
you're
you
always going to be relevant.
exactly, and use it in a way that creates value. I was just thinking about McKinsey has just dropped a new study, Where is Customer Care in 2024? And interestingly enough, Gen Z consumers between 18 and 28 list live phone conversations among the most preferred ways to reach a company and for help and support, which is really interesting. So even that generation, seeks the human contact.
Beautiful, right? And
Yeah,
it's never going to end because we're always going to have trust issues. So all of
yeah,
our trust issues with and all of our technology and all of our human moments, they will never end. We're always going to want them. And as long as we maintain ourselves as trust advisors or trust leaders, how can we lead trust in every way for our customer? We will always be at the forefront of every brand. We will lead them to the right place. You just have to focus on trust as your guiding light.
it basically goes back to what you said earlier. It really is about how do you use technology to make an organization more human.
Amen.
Exactly. I don't know if there was one other question. Um, how to drive a company to adopt and implement H2H related to generate better relationships. How to drive a company to adopt and implement H2H. Well, I think
Yeah, that's a good.
maybe as sort of a closing comment.
That could be a whole nother hour. And I think
Exactly.
we covered a lot of it. I would just, with the 30 to 60 seconds we have left, I would probably say that,
Yeah.
the biggest thing is that we all have to get around the table and practice it.
Learn.
We get around the table and do what we did when social media first started. How are we going to respond to this? Well,
Exactly.
social
Yeah.
media managers, like the Oreo cookie famous thing that happened, people got around the table and they practiced what they would say and how they would say it and where they were needed and how to be more human. It hasn't changed.
Exactly.
It has
No.
not changed, and it will not
And it
change.
will not change.
So just continue doing that very same thing. It's just the tools that have changed, not the strategy. Strategy will never go away. We're always going to need strategy, and the biggest players that you want to focus on are the strategic advisors in your business. So I'll stop right there.
Thank you so much. At the bottom, actually, it says where people can find you. So briankramer.com/about. And with that, I really would like to thank you for what I found a very interesting and inspiring fireside chat. Thank you so much. And
Great
hope,
conversation.
yes, exactly. And to all of you, thank you for joining us today. Really nice to have you all here. We hope that this fireside chat inspired you. And I just want to make you aware of our next executive session, which is on economics of empathy, why customer, employee, and AI centricity pays, with Dr. Natalie Betuhoff on April the 11th. So with that, thank you so much, everybody. And look forward to see you again, Brian.
You as well. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. All
You can
right.
stay just a second. I'm going to close
Yes.
here.